Hello, everybody. Welcome to the power session this week. Excited to be with you today, as I always am, to be able to talk with you about how your brain works, to be able to talk with you about the patterns that are dictating the outcomes of your life. That's what we do here at Habit Finder. We want to find the habits of thinking, the habits inside your brain that are dictating where you currently are. Whether it's where you want to be able to get to and some of the alignments that will be required, some of the disruptions that will be required for you to be able to get past your next obstacle, your next requirement of growth, not just to be able to create what you want. It's one thing to be able to create abundantly, but as a conversation I was having with a very successful, very successful and powerful person this morning in business. It's another thing to be able to learn the abundance of fulfillment, to actually find the satisfaction, the enjoyment in what you create. Because a lot of us are built off of the drug of dopamine and other endorphins of the anticipation. And we get there and it can be a little bit of a letdown. So we're not just here to figure out how to create more income, how to create better relationships, but how to sustain those, how to find fulfillment in the process. So excited to be with you again today and to be able to pour into you on a particular topic that, as I was thinking about in preparation for today's power session, definitely needs to be talked about, because I am seeing this show up more and more and more as a mindset. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that it's becoming a mindset, which is a set of patterns in your mind dictating your brain's approach to just about anything. That's what's so beautiful about a mindset, but that's what's so scary about a mindset, is once you have a mindset, your brain will apply it to every area of your life, whether you realize it or not. So I want to be really careful about not creating compartments in our lives that have other sets of rules. I'm all for emotional compartmentalization. There are times where that method, that approach is really important, especially when life is very traumatic, when it's very disruptive, very difficult to be able to get through. Those compartments can be a lifesaver, quite literally. What we don't want to have are principle-based compartments, where we think that there's a different set of principles that allow us to show up great at work, but they don't really apply at home. Or things that we apply at home that we don't apply when we're volunteering or when we're fulfilling leadership positions or whatever it might be. We want to find consistent principles across the board. And this mindset, the one we're talking about today, is one that I think people are developing without even realizing they're developing this mindset. And it's wreaking havoc in so many other areas of their life that I hope to be able to point it out to you today and to give you an alternative. And of course, some practical methods for being able to challenge this mindset and creating this alternative. So with all that said, let's jump in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Habit Finder Power Session. We want to be able to harness the power of the mind. We want to be able to challenge what we believe is truth, what we believe is our reality, to be able to progress to the next evolution of ourselves, giving others around us permission to do the same. That is an amazing way to live. That is what we look to create here at Habit Finder, and being able to challenge the patterns of your brain that are in alignment or not in alignment with what you're trying to create. And today we're taking on a biggie. Today we are taking on a major problem, one that has been researched ad nauseum lately, or probably over the last decade especially, that is proving to have serious cognitive impact on the way your brain functions and your ability to connect with other people, and is spilling into our businesses and our lives and our families. But it is a mindset that is so popular, and it is spreading like wildfire. And it's also interesting because it's a mindset that is usually not learned intentionally. This is a set in your mind, a set of patterns in your mind. That's what a mindset is. That's what we measure scientifically, mathematically in the habit finder. Why? So you know where to really look. So you know what's really going on. You may know your arm hurts, but until you get an x-ray and can show that the bone is broken or not, the course of action is difficult to be able to take on specifically. So we want to provide the x-ray for the patterns in your brain to be able to make sure that this mindset we're going to talk about today, that a lot of us are learning without even realizing, a lot of us are underestimating the impact it's having on our dreams and our ability to create them, on our teams and our ability to grow them and lead them. The ability to be able to show up better in every role of our life comes down to this mindset. And the scariest thing about it is that a lot of people don't realize how often they are teaching themselves this mindset. So without further ado, allow me to reveal what this mindset is. And it is the browsing mindset. The browsing mindset is a major challenge right now. I was going to say pandemic, but that's a little bit of a hot word right now. So we'll call it a major challenge in people's lives right now. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with what browsing is. Browsing, perusing, to wander around and look and see what comes out at you, what gets your attention, what grabs you. A lot of you have probably understand what browsing is in terms of an activity. But this has become such a normal part of our lives with tremendous technological advancement. Great things, great reasons why it's become a major challenge, which is also similar to our own lives. If you have major challenges, there are usually great reasons you have major challenges, okay? Let's time out for a second before we go any further into browsing, because this is a critical piece. Because a lot of us are beating ourselves up. What's wrong with me? Why do I have these major problems? Why can't I overcome this big issue? Why do I keep showing up in this way or not doing these things? That's coming from great things. It's really important that that's the impetus. That's the starting point of our exploration. To be curious, not about what's wrong with us, what is so right about us that needs to be calibrated with greater levels of awareness, with greater levels of acute sensitivity, because it's so powerful. That's how we want to consider ourselves. And that's how I want you to consider this browsing mindset, because we're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about technology, but I'm not here to make that the bad guy. That is completely up to you, how you want that to be interpreted, how you want that to show up in your life, because those platforms are not making you do anything, okay? No one held a gun to your head and made you download Facebook, okay? Nobody kidnapped your family and held you ransom until you spent a certain number of hours impacting keywords that people search for on Google, okay? We're not being forced to be in these places, and they are neutral, powerful, but neutral platforms. But the natural bias to the human brain's desire for ease, for shortcuts, for wanting life to be easier is being concocted and created into this browsing mindset that is sucking the life out of what we think we are wanting to create. Let's talk a little bit about browsing. You all know what browsing is, an activity, but let's talk about browsing in terms of the mindset, okay? Browsing is usually a reaction to overstimulation, a reaction to being overloaded, overwhelmed. Okay, it creates an unintentional energy. It creates a passive and a numb energy. It makes us naturally indifferent and has us paying primarily attention to superficial things. And it does all this with this subtle siren song of long-term persistence. See, browsing is not an event. It's not a single stimulation. It is a collection of stimulations that have created the overstimulation. It's not just one load being dropped on us. It is a tremendous persistence of that load that allows it to become an overload, okay? And as we get overwhelmed in this process, the patterns that it starts to create are what we want to pay attention to today. Because when we're in a browsing mindset, which comes from browsing primarily, okay, a lot of you go through your news feed, go through your stories, just Google search random things. You go to YouTube, you might even go to what you feel are really productive browsing. Oh, I'm I'm on TED.com looking for earth-shattering, life-changing talks, but you're browsing them. I'm watching stuff that's giving me great political input, but you're browsing them. And anytime we go into a browsing mentality, okay, we are surrendering to overstimulation, overload, overwhelm, and becoming subject to unintentionality, passiveness, numbness, indifference, and superficial outlooks. Now, maybe not that bad for a time you're spending on Facebook, on the Facebook app, but if that pattern is teaching you to show up in other areas of your life, because that's how the brain works, it operates in patterns, that could be really scary. And in fact, we're watching it play out in a really scary way, time in and time out. We're not just browsing social media. We're not just browsing Google. We are browsing our businesses. We are browsing our families, and we're browsing our lives. We're becoming unintentional. We're becoming passive. We're available, just like when we're browsing. Our eyes are open. We're paying the littlest amount of attention. Why? Well, because we're waiting for something that we're browsing to grab our attention. We're waiting for it to act upon us. One of the primary challenges of a browsing mentality. And many of us have trained ourselves in our lives to believe that that's why we're not successful, because success has not acted upon us. Surely they all have something I don't. Surely they look ways I'll never look. They sound ways I'll never sound. They have friends that I'll never have. We slip into this browsing mentality of we want to make sure we're still available. We want to make sure we're still around the world, but at the least degree of commitment possible, at the least degree of intentionality possible is what browsing starts to create. Okay, I don't know what to do, so I'll browse. And we're looking for something to grab us. And at that point, we are surrendering our intentionality to an algorithm. We're surrendering our reality to whatever someone else wants it to be. We are surrendering our choices to being passively, numbly, and superficially made for us. And if you want to tell me, if you know anything about the human brain, that you can do that for even 10 minutes a day and not have it create a browsing impact on your relationships, on your business. For example, how many of you have businesses that have a back office where you can see the numbers, you can see where people are at, and how many of you have caught yourself browsing your back office, looking at numbers, trying to be intentional, looking for something that's going to grab out at you, something that's going to jump out at you, something that's going to inspire you to make a phone call rather than showing up that way and bringing those things to the table. A browsing mentality puts us in the back seat, calls the Uber driver and says, just take me wherever you want. And if I see someplace I want to stop along the way, I'll let you know. That is a browsing mindset. And too many of us are being lulled into this siren song in our lives. Not just when we're on our phones, not just when we're on our computers or our tablets, but in our mental pattern, in our mindset. And we're going to want to become more and more aware of the ways that this is showing up and what we can do about it. Okay, enough with making a case for what a browsing mentality looks like. And if you think you are immune and you spend time browsing in terms of an activity and think you're immune to the mindset, just pay a little closer attention, okay? Because why I love this arena, before we go into the solution for a browsing mindset, I'm going to give you 3 questions. If you'll just ask yourself these 3 questions on a more consistent basis, you can eradicate a browsing mindset. Now, again, we're starting this conversation without making anything, bad, anything the enemy. Social media is not the enemy, okay? And other people are not the enemy. We're not our own enemy. Our interpretation, our stories, and the 3 things I'll give you are what we're going to want to be able to have in check to make sure that these powerful yet neutral platforms, okay, in terms of how we choose to engage them, can be harnessed for our purposes and for what we want to create. We definitely want to do that to make sure we're coming at this from the right direction, okay? Because browsing itself is not bad until it becomes unintentional. There are times where it's just, hey, let's just browse Netflix and see if we can find a good show to watch together. There are times that that's not too bad. It's when it becomes a pattern, which a lot of people are letting it into their life as a pattern without knowing it. That's what makes it so easy to have happen, is we're not aware of the way it's impacting the patterns of our mind, our mindset. And so what I want to do is I want to give you 3 things, just 3 questions you can ask yourself to be able to check for a browsing mindset, to make sure that you haven't gone passive and numb and indifferent to your life. I mean, think about it. We've all seen, the news feed in social media. We've all seen the Instagram. We've all seen the tapping on the right side to go through stories until we find a story that catches our attention. We've all gone to Google to look for things. We've all been on Amazon. What's today's deals? I've never searched for this kind of thing, or I wonder if they make that kind of thing. And we get caught up into this browsing mentality. Okay. We've all seen that. But what does that look like when we browse our kids, for example, where we've gotten just a little bit more passive with our kids, a little bit more numb with our kids, a little bit more superficial with our kids? We still feel present, just as we do when we're on the newsfeed. We're looking at what's passing by, but we're waiting for something from it to grab us, waiting for something from our spouse, from our kids, from our bank account, from our investments, from our business. We're waiting for someone else, something else, anything else to stimulate us, to be able to stand out amidst the overstimulation, to be able to inspire a new load amidst the overload, to be able to overwhelm us with enthusiasm rather than being overwhelmed with indifference and other challenges. So here's the 3 questions I want you to consider to be able to start breaking the cycle of browsing, because it plays right into the brain's fantastical loop, the brain's desire for life to be easier, to spend so much time obsessively thinking about how great your life will be when I can get there, and sabotaging here in the process. Here's the 3 questions I want you to consider. Because what we want to do is we want to trade in a browsing mindset for being intentional. Browsing is not intentional, okay? You can choose to start the activity intentionally, but by nature, it wears down intentionality. It wears down purpose, okay? And it wears down your plans. And so what I want you to do first in terms of being intentional is first ask yourself a very simple question before you browse anything. We're going to use social media. We're going to use Amazon. We're going to use Google as laboratories to experiment with our own browsing, wherever browsing occurs for you. If it's in the back office of your business, use that, okay? If it's in figuring out what movie you're going to watch tonight, then whatever, start with that. Anything where you naturally browse and where it seems to be acceptable to browse, use it as a laboratory. First thing I want you to do is ask, what's the point? What's the point? Before you open any social media app on your phone, before you open Google or Amazon, I just want you to stop and consciously ask yourself, before you push that button that is as automatic as breathing and checking the notifications on your phone, which is as automatic as breathing. In fact, those are autonomic. They're even more than automatic. I just want you to stop and pause. See if you can catch yourself before you glance for notifications, before you click on social media to see if you got another like or another comment, or whether that person's responded to that message. Ask yourself, what's the point? Out loud. Hey, what's the point? And this is not about there being a right answer. It's about heightening your awareness before you go in. Well, the point is, I've had a pretty rough day and I'd like to zone out. Okay, cool. So if that's the point, awesome. Just be real about it. Because it's the lack of consciousness, the lack of awareness that makes browsing so detrimental, so challenging. So just ask yourself, what's the point? And again, it's not about the point being right or wrong, good or bad, above the line or below the line. It's about it just being real about what's the point. Then you're going to ask yourself, number 2, what's the purpose? Well, the purpose is to zone out. The purpose is to just give my brain a passive break. Okay, cool. No problem. So then we can go to number 3. What's the plan? Well, the plan is to zone out. Okay, but like any good plan, how long? For how long? Well, I don't know. I just want to do it. Well, that's dangerous. Let's check in with that. How long do I feel like I could do it without creating any major damage. Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, great. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes and I'm just going to browse. I'm just going to go in and just kind of zone out, whatever it is. Now, this is what some people might say is a negative example, but it's not positive or negative. These questions aren't about having the right answers. It's just about challenging yourself to actually answer them before you go in, because then you'll go in with a significantly higher level of awareness than you would have otherwise, even if the point is to just give your brain a break. The purpose is so that you can just veg out and not worry about anything mentally. And the plan is I'm going to do that for 10 minutes or 45 minutes. I don't know, whatever it is for you, but you actually have a defined plan now. So you can go in and you can cut loose and you can watch mindless television, or you can watch political videos on Facebook, or whatever you can watch cat videos on YouTube, whatever your jam is that would normally catch your browsing mindset. No matter how admirable or noble or academic you may believe it is, almost everyone. And I just say that to not scare people that are that don't like statistics, okay, or are overly statistical, because absolutes and everything, but almost everyone, so most people watching this have a browsing mentality somewhere in their life. So let's find it and let's ask ourselves before we go into that drug, okay, because that's what browsing can be. We're going to ask ourselves, what's the point? Again, no judgment for ourselves, because otherwise we're going to resist even asking ourselves what the point is. If it's got to be the right point, then why would our brain want to check in with that? Because if it wants to do it already and it knows we don't have a good answer for it or the right answer for it, why would we want to consciously invite ourselves to try and answer it? So again, what's the point is not about having the right answer. It's about having an answer. What's the point? Well, it's to find the next person that could potentially join my business. Okay, cool. Right on. That's why I'm going into Facebook. All right, so what's the purpose? Well, my purpose is to be able to ease suffering in people's lives that feel like they were born to work for themselves, but have a difficult time being able to find a way to do it. Okay, that's awesome. We've got a great point. We've got a great purpose. What's the plan? Oh, well, I was just going to kind of go through Messenger. I was going to kind of do this. I was going to kind of, we slipped into browsing. We slipped into an unintentional, indifferent, passive approach to what sounded like a great point and a great purpose. Well, what's the plan? Okay, the plan is I'm going to go open my friends list, and I'm going to go to the bottom of the list, which are the people that interact with me the least, and I'm going to pick 5. I'm going to click on each of the 5 and see if there's anything going on in their life of note that I could comment on or interact with or react to be able to try and create a conversation. How long is that going to take? Probably only take me about 10 minutes. Cool, set a timer. Awesome, let's go in. Just like a rappeller wouldn't jump off without a belay or without an anchor to be able to rappel down the cliff, don't jump in without a plan. Don't jump in without a timer. Don't jump in without your intentionality. But again, sometimes it's going to be really cool, noble points, purposes, and then plans will follow that. Other times it's going to be, yeah, I know I focus on people's health, but I'm going to eat this carton of ice cream. Well, what's the point? Because I just need an emotional win right now. Well, what's the purpose? Well, ice cream makes me feel good initially, not so much later, but it makes me feel good initially. Okay. Is that a good enough purpose right now? And you might turn back right then and there, or you might go, yeah, for right now, this is good enough. So what's the plan? Okay. Well, the plan is I'm actually just going to have a cup. I'm literally going to go get a measuring cup of a cup and put it in rather than the whole carton. I'll reduce my guilt that way, but still get kind of an emotional win for right now because I just need something, and it's way better than drinking that entire bottle of vodka right now or whatever. However you're justifying it, just go into it being honest and clear about what's the point, what's the purpose, and what's the plan. And if you can still browse, if you can still let loose, if you can still, go for binging a thing on Netflix or whatever, if you can give yourself permission to do that with a plan, you still get an opportunity to be human, and you're more likely to come back and ask these questions for more productive things as well. Otherwise, you're going to keep trying, your brain's going to keep trying to be incognito with the browsing mindset, and you're going to find it more and more difficult to be intentional because you got caught up with what's right and what's wrong about what you should do with your time and all the stuff that you should be spot on with intentionally, always above the line, always positive, blah, 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 that you just can't sustain as a human being. I'm not giving you tools to be awesome all the time. I'm not giving you tools to be, as we say many times here, superhuman, giving you tools to be superhuman. What's great about getting really good at that is you end up connecting with other people who want it. And if you have services or products or things to offer them, they're going to want them from you because you are superhuman, not because you're superhuman. Okay? So that's all. That's all I want you to consider, is pay attention to browsing in your life as a lot more than just what you do on social media or Google or whatever it might be, and realize the impact it has, the indifference it creates. And let's take a stand and choose to be intentional. And how do we do that? We ask ourselves, what's the point? With no judgment, whatever it is. And it should be a simple answer. What's the purpose? What is it? What's really behind that? What do we really want? What has a little bit more vision, a little bit more understanding of the past? Because sometimes that might deter the point not being good enough. Other times we're just being real with ourselves. And then finally, what's the plan? Even things that the world would want you to believe is destructive, you could do with a plan and be okay. Oh, but if you eat anything unhealthy and you're all for being healthy, you've just destroyed everything. No, it's when you go in with a browsing mentality and beat yourself up about it after, causing you to do it again, and then beat yourself up again, and then do it again, and slip before you know it, you're back into old emotional habits. Go in with a plan. Okay? Especially if you knew you were probably going to do it anyway. A lot of us know when that carton of ice cream is toast. There's no way we're getting up in the morning, it's still sitting in the freezer. So ask yourself, what's the point? Ask yourself, what's the purpose? And you might get that far alone and walk into your freezer, pull that carton of ice cream out, walk outside and throw it in the garbage. Other times you might pull it out and now you've got a plan to only eat some of it or a plan to eat all of it. But it's your plan now, so you can own it. You chose it. Because browsing isn't about choosing. Browsing is about passively taking the least amount of activity possible to be able to have something jump out at you, something take control of your destiny, of your fate, of your intentionality, rather than the other way around, which is the only way to create abundance and success. What's the point? What's the purpose? And if you get that far, now you can put a plan together. It's not about good or bad. It's just about being real. And you'll find yourself, as you increase your awareness, you will naturally lean towards the more productive, the more abundant choices. But you don't do that by completely depriving yourself of the other stuff. That's why the browsing mentality has taken such a hold on humanity, because we are denying our humanity. And so it needs to seep out in more sabotaging ways, in secret, like browsing. Thanks for listening today. I hope this doesn't scare you to go out and like, oh, where am I browsing? Where am I browsing? You could simply deploy these 3 questions in anything you want to do. Okay, as frivolous as it might seem, as superficial as it might seem, deploy these 3 questions and see what it does to your intentionality. See what it does for your opportunity to be able to get just a little bit better, because that's all it takes for you to wake up at some undefined period of time from now and go, holy crap, it's happening. My life is showing up. Because we learn to start allowing it to show up today, not sometime down the road when we finally whatever. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day. Please share this out to anyone who needs to challenge their browsing mentality. Share this with people who talk about being more intentional but may not have some simple tools to help them do it more consistently, and to be able to let go of the judgment and the guilt that oftentimes makes our activities worse than better, and destroys our habits altogether, rather than finds more conscious ways to replace habits with the ones that'll get us where we want to go. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye.